Halo is a military science fiction first-person shooter video game franchise created by Bungie and now managed and developed by 343 Industries as a subsidiary of Microsoft Studios. The series is centered on an interstellar war between humanity and the theocratic alliance of aliens known as the Covenant. Halo Combat Evolved is a military science fiction first-person shooter video game developed by Bungie and published by Microsoft Game Studios. The first game of the Halo franchise, it was released and launched as the title for Xbox gaming system on November 15, 2001, and is considered the platform's killer app. More than 5 million copies were sold worldwide by November 2005. Microsoft released version of the game for the Microsoft Windows and Apple devices in 2003, and the surrounding storylines was adapted to elaborated into a series of novel, comic books, and live-action web series. The game was later released as a downloadable Xbox original for the Xbox 360. A high-definition remake, Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary, was released for Xbox 360 on the 10th anniversary of the original game's launch, and was released at the port of the Halo the Master Chief Collection. As the first-person shooter, the gameplay of Halo Combat Evolved is fundamentally similar to that of the peers, focusing on a combat in a 3D environment that is viewed almost entirely from a character's eye view. The players can move around and look up, down, left or right. The game features vehicles ranging from armored jeeps and tanks to alien hovercrafts and aircraft, many of which can be controlled by the player. The game switches to a third-person perspective during the vehicle, usually for pilots and mounted guns operators, passengers maintained as the first-person viewer. The game's heads-up display includes a motion tracker that registers moving allies, moving or fringing enemies, and vehicles in a certain radius of a player. The player character is equipped with an energy shield which nullifies damage from weapons, fire, and forceful impacts. The shield's charge appears as a blue bar in the corner of the game's head-up display, and it automatically recharges if no damage is sustained for a brief period. When the shield is fully charged, the player is highly vulnerable and further damage reduced to the point of the secondary health meter. When this health meter reaches 0, the character dies and the game reloads from the saved point. Health can be replenished through the collection of the health packs scattered around the game levels, but the game's introduction of the regenerating shield mechanics represented a departure from the FPS game of the time. After the success of Combat Evolved, a sequel was expected and highly anticipated. Bungie found inspiration in the plot points and gameplay elements that had been left out of the first game, including multiplayer over the internet through the Xbox Live. Time constraints forced a series of a cutback in the size of the scope of the game, including the cliffhangers ending to the game campaign mode that left many in the studios dissatisfied. Among Halo 2 marketing efforts was an alternative reality game called I Love Bees that involved players solving real-world puzzles. Halo 2 is a shooter game with the players predominantly experiencing gameplay from a first-person perspective. Players use a combination of a human and alien weaponry and vehicles to progress through the game levels. The player's health bar is not visible, but players are instead equipped with a damage-absorbing shield that regenerates when not taking fire. Certain weapons can be dual-wielded, allowing the players to trade accuracy, the use of grenades and melee attacks for raw firepower. The player can carry 2 weapons at a time, or 3 if dual-wielding. 1 weapon remains holstered, with each weapon having advantages and disadvantages in different combat situations. For example, most current weapons issue disposable ammo clips for a contained battery, which cannot be replaced if depleted. However, these weapons can overheat if fired continuously for prolonged periods. Human weapons are less effective in penetrating shields and require reloading, but cannot overheat due to prolonged fire. The player can carry a total of 8 grenades, 4 human grenades and 4 Covenant, to dislodge the disrupt enemies. New in Halo 2 is the ability to board enemy vehicles that are near the player and traveling at low speeds. The player or AI latches onto the vehicle and forcibly ejects the other drivers from the vehicle. Bungie began developing Halo 3 shortly after Halo 2 shipped. The game was officially announced at the E3 2006 and its release was preceded by a multiplayer beta open to selected players who purchased the Xbox 360 game Crackdown. Microsoft spent over $40 million on marketing the game in an effort to sell more game consoles and broaden the appeal of the game beyond the established Halo fanbase. Marketing includes cross-promotions and an alternative reality game. Halo 3 is a shooter game where players primarily experience gameplay from a first-person perspective. Much of the gameplay takes place on foot, but also includes segmented focus on vehicular combats. The balance of the weapons and objects in the game was adjusted to better adhere to the golden triangle of Halo. These are weapons, grenades, and melee attacks, which are available to a player in most situations. Players may dual wield some weapons, foregoing the use of the grenades and melee attacks in favor of the combined firepower of two weapons. Many weapons available in the previously installments of the series return with minor cosmetics and power alternations. Unlike previous installments, the player's secondary weapon is visible and there is player model holstered on a sling across the player's back. Halo 3 introduces support weapons, which are cumbersome two-handed weapons that slow the player but offers greatly increased firepower in return. In addition to weapons, the game contains a new class of gear called equipment. These items have various effects ranging from the defensive screens to shield regenerations and flares. Only one piece of equipment can be carried at a time. The game's vehicular component has been expanded with new, diveable and AI-only vehicles. After 3 years of the success of Halo 3, Bungie began Halo Reach in the Xbox 360 series. Halo Reach is the first-person shooter video game developed by Bungie and published by Microsoft Game Studios for the Xbox 360 home video game console. The 6th installment in the Halo series, Reach, was released worldwide in September 2010. The game takes place in the year 2552, where humanity is locked in a war with the Alien Covenant. Players control Noble 6, a member of elite Super Soldier Squad, when the human world known as Reach falls under a Covenant attack. In the game's campaign, which can be played alone or cooperatively, players assume the role of a Noble 6, a super soldier engaged in combat with an alien collective known as a Covenant. The Covenant come in 8 distinct varieties, with different ranks and classes for each type. For example, elites are the leaders of a group, while grunts are less intelligent and only dangerous in large groups. The player is equipped with a recharging energy shield and absorbs damage from weapons, fire and impacts. When the energy shield is depleted, the player loses health. When the player's health reaches 0, the character dies and the game reloads from the save checkpoint. Health is replenished using health sparks scattered through the Reach levels. The campaign's encounters with the enemies are typically large, open spaces with the weapon caches, cover from enemy fire and strategic vantage points. Due to the Halo series are a dogfight sequence set in space. Reach features updates versions of the old weapons, plus new weapons fulfilling various combat roles. In Halo 3, players can carry single-use equipment power-ups that offer temporary offensive or defensive advantages. This system of a single-use equipment is replaced in Reach by reusable and persistent armor abilities that remain with the character until they are replaced. The abilities are a jetpack, active camouflage, sprint, hologram, which creates a facsimile of the players running towards a target point, drop shield, which creates a bubble that heals those inside and protects them from a limited amount of damage, and the armor lock, which immobilizes the player but grants invincibility for a brief period of time. When playing as Covenant elites, players also have access to an evade armor ability. Development of Halo 4 began in 2009 and continued until September 2012. Halo 4 is the 343 Industries' first original title within the Halo series. Previously, development of the main series was undertaken by Bungie, the creator of the franchise. Its developmental process, 343 Industries decided to explore the Forerunners fiction within the Halo universe. leading the team to design a new setting, enemies, and main antagonist. Existing characters and assets received visual overhauls, and motion capture was used for animations with cutscenes. A goal for a Halo 4 story was incorporate more human elements. To achieve this, the developers choose to delve more deeply into the relationship between the two protagonists, Master Chief and Cortana. Several external studios assigned 343 Industries with development Halo 4, and over 350 people worked on a game in total. Halo 4 features updated versions of many human and Covenant weaponry from the previous Halo games, as well as introducing new weapons from the Humans, Covenant, and Prometheans. The game also features reusable equipment called armor abilities introduced in Halo Reach. New armor abilities are Auto Sentry, the Hardlight Shield, which activates a protective barrier similar to the Riot Shield, Promethean Vision, which diminishes environment details and shows hidden players and silhouettes, a Regeneration Field, which heals all players in a close proximity and can emit a short-range kinetic blast, and finally the Thruster Pack, which allows the players to launch themselves several feet in a horizontal direction. Returning abilities includes Active Camouflage, Jetpack, and Hologram, which creates a doppelganger of the player running towards a target point. Sprinting returns in Halo 4, however, players can now use it independently of their armor ability. New gameplay mechanics introduced to the series includes throwing and catching, which has been implemented into the multiplayer games mode Oddball and Griefball. So here we go for the Halo 5 Guardians. Microsoft announced Halo 5 for the Xbox One and Electronic Entertainment Expo 2013. A podcast titled Hunt the Truth marked the game, focusing on the Master Chief's backstory. The game and its related hardware grossed over 400 million in its first 24 hours and 500 million in the first week, outselling Halo 4, which then held the best-selling record for the franchise. Upon release, Halo 5 received generally positive reviews from the critics, with the praise directed at gameplay, visuals, level design, and multiplayer modes. However, the game's single-player campaign met the divided responses, with the criticism directed at its short length, story, writing, and ending. New to the series are the Spartan abilities, replacing the armor abilities of the previous games. In universe, their characters' Mjolnir armor has been upgraded with a variety of thrusters that allow them increased mobility options and all the three axes of movement. They are context dependent and can be used for attack, defense, and evasion. Additionally, all Halo 5 firearms can be aimed by looking down the iron sights, a capability restricted to specific weapons in the previous games. Previous games in the franchise have featured brief gameplay segments where the player's character is accompanied by a non-player character, in the form of a UNSC Marines, non-human alike like the Arbiter or other Spartans. Halo 5 also equipped the player with a persistent fire team on NPC Spartans who are present all the time and can receive limited orders using the Xbox controller. During cooperative play, other players assume control of these Spartans, and each Spartan has a different gameplays and attributes. If any Spartans player controlled or not, they enter an incapacitated state and a teammate must rush over and revive them before they die. And here we go to the final point. The Halo Infinite. It's the last part of the game for the current state, and I believe that will be a really huge comeback for the Halo universe itself. First of all, we have a pretty decent graphics in my point of view, which is amazing in a 4K graphics, as well as we have some new mechanics and totally new instruments for the game, such a grappling shot and different new weapons, which can bring to the game much more than it was before. Also, there's a slight possibility of having a battle royale or a huge battles on arena, like maybe 20 versus 20 people, which will be insanely interesting for me as a Halo fan. So I believe that Halo Infinite will bring a new fresh blood to the game, and that will be amazing. So guys, I would like to know your opinions about the Halo evolution. What do you think? What will happen with the franchise? What the current state of it? And others. Please let me know in the comments below. So if you enjoyed the video, please be sure to subscribe, leave a like and comment on the video because it really helps, and I see you soon in the Halo universe.